What was the standout aspect of this report, the standout failing for you?
I mean, where to start? I mean, 1 in 5 health and care providers has never been inspected. There are examples of hospitals not being inspected for as long as a decade. Care providers not being inspected since 2015. Ratings, you know, the good or outstanding requires improvement that people use to make decisions about where to be treated or where to be cared. Basically a mishmash of a partial inspection combined with inspection reports dating back years, which mean that I can't sit on your programme this morning and tell people confidently that when they're looking at those ratings today that they're a true and fair and accurate reflection of the quality of care that's being provided. Any one of those things would be shocking. Taken together, they represent a stunning failure in the regulator that is meant to be able to give us a true and accurate reflection on quality of care and patient safety, on care users' safety. That's how serious this is, and the reason I've chosen to publish the interim report today is because this is urgent. I want to be honest with people as quickly as possible, but also, as we think about the future of the Care Quality Commission, we need to make sure we find the right leadership. We need a new permanent chief executive, a new permanent chief inspector of hospitals. And so to those outstanding candidates out there, I want them to know that we're going to be honest about the scale of the challenge, but also they'll have a board at the CQC and a government that will give them every backing to reform this organisation and turn it inside out so patients and care users can have confidence in it again.
It's interesting you come to... I mean, do you think people want this job?
Well, it's a difficult challenge, but one of the things I've found in the first few weeks as Health and Social Care Secretary, and one of the things that gives me confidence about the future, actually, is when I said the NHS is broken but not beaten, there was almost a collective sigh of relief throughout the NHS, because I think there are lots of staff that have been living in these intolerable conditions, working in these intolerable conditions, and are relieved that someone is being honest about the scale of the challenge, because if you get the diagnosis right, you're more likely to have the right prescription. And the same is also true in social care. Enormous challenges there. And it's going to take time to turn this around. We were honest about that before the election. We're honest now. But the starting point is surely getting the diagnosis right, getting the prescription right. And I've no doubt, you know, particularly when you think about the importance of the Care Quality Commission's work, that there will be outstanding leaders out there that are willing to roll their sleeves up and come and join us as we turn this around.
Speaking about the Commission, speaking more broadly about the NHS being broken, taking words from your press release this morning, you also said, I've been stunned by the extent of the failings. That sort of rhetoric you've used quite a lot over the last couple of weeks. I just wonder what your assessment of the morale of all of the people, different roles that ultimately report to you now, essentially work for you now. How bad is the morale? Do you think statements like that make it worse in the short term to get better in the long term? And when do you think we can measure you, a year, 5 years, where you hope every single person that works and reports to you, or the vast majority, loves their job and feels good about it again?
So I'd say two things. Firstly, I think people want honesty from the top. And actually one of the reasons the NHS is in this state, and one of the reasons the Care Quality Commission is in this mess, is because after 14 years, you had a government that wanted to brush these things under the carpet and engage in a conspiracy of silence, because if they were honest about the challenge, they'd have to be honest about their responsibility for creating it. We've got an opportunity as a new government, a new broom, to just be brutally honest, and actually in that honesty I think people are drawing confidence that things might turn around. And I can't do this on my own. I need, you know, 1.5 million people working in the NHS. In fact, if you take social care as well, well over 2 million people to be part of a team effort to turn this situation around. And I do find that optimism and confidence. So, yes, morale has been on the floor, but people believe in the NHS, they want to see great social care in our country, and they're willing to roll their sleeves up and make it happen. And it's one of the reasons why, as I've hit the ground running in the first few weeks, I've got the junior doctors in straight away with negotiations underway, because we've got to end that dispute. We've got GPs due to take collective action next week. I've had them in every week since I took office to make sure that we can see off that threat and actually work with the professions to turn the situation around, because everyone believes in the NHS, but they can also see how broken it is. Together, I think we can turn the situation around. And in terms of when people can judge us, this is the central test, I think, for me and for the Labour government at the next general election. Is our NHS better at the election than it was when we took office. And that's the yardstick we know we'll be judged by. And I know we'll be in a better place because we've got the right team, the right plan. And I still think, for all the challenges, people across the system who really want to be the generation that took the NHS from its worst crisis in its history to getting it back on its feet and making sure it's fit for the future.
So presumably we're going to hear from Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, on Monday, and she's going to outline, her latest outlook on finances. Reports suggest that she's going to reveal a £20 billion black hole that needs to be filled. Given all of what you're saying, would your advice to her be, if there are any black holes to be filled, it has to be filled with a tax increase or more borrowing, not a spending cut?
So, firstly, I won't preempt what the Chancellor's going to say on Monday, but the same iron discipline you saw from Rachel Reeves in opposition, she's carried into government. And we are with her 100% on this. There are tough choices to be made. In terms of my engagement with the audit of the public finances, I've been finding example after example within the Department of Health and Social Care of unrealistic timetables, unfunded commitments the previous government have made, and I've handed all of that information over to the Chancellor. There are tough decisions. We will all have to work together to deliver the tough choices that we need to make.
Those issues you found in your department, is that purely on the former health minister, or is it also in part on the civil servants that still work for you?
Well, look, I think ultimately advisors advise, ministers decide. And take the new hospitals programme, really important programme, lots of projects that communities feel really strongly about. Totally fictitious timetables, unfunded commitments made by the previous government. That's not fair to communities. It's not fair to NHS leaders who've been in this kind of holding pattern of stop, start. And which is why I said to Parliament this week, I've asked officials to come up with an honest assessment of realistic timetables and the funding that's needed to deliver that programme, because we're committed to it, but I'm determined to come forward and give the public an honest timetable that we can actually stick to, because what they've had so far is a total work of fiction, and I think the Conservatives should hang their heads in shame for it.
In terms of the figure on Monday, the size of the finance mismatch, £20 billion, is that ballpark what you expect?
That's for the Chancellor to announce in terms of the figure. But what I can say is the thing that has been genuinely shocking for us, we all knew the public finances and the economy, worst inheritance since the Second World War. We knew that going in. I think what we have been shocked by is the state of in-year challenges in the public finances, and also the extent to which a whole load of things the previous government announced as fully funded programmes on, timetables that was given to Parliament, works of fiction.
Two quick final questions, if I may. It's expected and being reported that today the government is going to drop the previous government's opposition to the ICC's arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you support that decision?
I haven't seen a decision from the government. It certainly wouldn't be my announcement to make. I think people can draw two things from the last few weeks and actually where Labour was in opposition. Firstly, we believe very strongly in the rule of law. That's not just domestically, but internationally, and the separation of powers between judges and politicians. Everyone has got to be held accountable under the law. The second thing I'd say is, in terms of this devastating conflict in Gaza, we've been very clear we need an immediate ceasefire, the return of all hostages, and a serious process to deliver lasting peace for the Israelis and the Palestinians, the two-state solution that is the only solution. And that's why David Lammy, as our Foreign Secretary, has been to the region in his first few weeks as Foreign Secretary, and why he and the Prime Minister are absolutely determined to use Britain's influence on the global stage to bring about peace and security for both Israelis and Palestinians.
And just finally, I wanted to ask about your views of the various events this week, but in particular the decision to suspend the whip from 7 of your colleagues that Keir Starmer took. Did it reveal a word that's been used occasionally about him, but in full, the ruthlessness of the Prime Minister? And if so, is that actually a good thing in a leader? Is it something you welcome?
I think it shows discipline. Look, we're going to have disagreements over the next 4 or 5 years. That's democracy. And I'm comfortable being challenged by members of Parliament, including people within my own party, about the decisions that I make. But a King's Speech is the government's programme, and the first King's Speech in particular is important. Labour MPs were elected to deliver that King's Speech. And look, the days of politics as performance art is over. We are in government to deliver. Everyone knew that. And for 7 people to choose to showboat or choose to use politics as performance art and to expect there not to be consequences was naive at best, but I think we've seen too much performance art politics. We're in government now to deliver. We will deliver on child poverty and we will deliver on every single other promise that we made.